Todd Bertuzzi and Steve Moore were willing to drop their gloves and dish out some stone-cold justice during their respective playing days. But one night in 2004 would change both their careers and their lives forever. Welcome back to another episode of Alternate Hockey History, the series where we revisit key moments throughout hockey history to see how an alternate outcome might have changed the history of the sport. In today's episode, we are going to be looking at the highly controversial incident between these two players as we ask the question, what if Todd Bertuzzi didn't hit Steve Moore? To remind you of what actually took place, allow me to take you back to March 8th, 2004. Bertuzzi's Vancouver Canucks faced off against Moore's Colorado Avalanche. Steve Moore, who was in his 69th NHL game, split over 3 seasons with Colorado, served a 5-minute penalty due to fighting Canucks forward Matt Cook early in the game. As the game went on, the Avalanche would go on to build a large lead in a game full of fights and physical play. Late in the third period, Todd Bertuzzi was sent onto the ice and began trying to instigate a fight with Moore due to his actions in this game and in the team's previous meeting where Moore had injured Canucks captain Marcus Naslund. After failing to do so, Bertuzzi skated after Moore, grabbed his jersey and punched him in the back of the head. Moore was knocked unconscious from the punch and fell face first into the ice as Bertuzzi landed on top of him. Moore's teammate Andrew Nicolishin and Bertuzzi's teammate Sean Pronger joined the top of the pile. Moore laid motionless for 10 minutes before being carried off the ice on a stretcher. The combined result of the punch, the fall to the ice and the players piling on top of him resulted in Steve Moore suffering 3 fractured vertebrae in his neck, facial cuts and a concussion. These injuries ended Steve Moore's professional playing career, whilst Bertuzzi was suspended for the remainder of the season and was tried in court for criminal assault charges. On August 19th, 2014, it was reported that the civil trial had ended with all parties agreeing to a confidential settlement. But what if Bertuzzi didn't sucker punch Moore? What if Moore didn't suffer such serious injuries? How would things have been different? Well, for starters, if this incident didn't take place, this game in March of 2004 between these two sides wouldn't carry nearly as much controversy or infamy as it does in the league today. This game would likely have been regarded as just another game between the two sides, and due to there being nothing worthy of remembering, either good or bad, it would likely go unremembered by most of the fans who watched it. Sure, the game might still have been a tough physical affair between the two sides without the sucker punch, and it would have been exciting to watch the game at the time given the events that had unfolded in the previous meetings between these two sides, but it would most likely have been forgotten or stored in the back of viewers' minds, like most of the games that you see during a season after the fact. If anything, this game would have been remembered by Canucks fans as that time they got blown out by Colorado, and for Avs fans it would have been seen as the time they demolished the Canucks due to the 9-2 final score. But other than that, it would have just been more of the same that they see for 80 games a season. Now, the most obvious difference in this alternate reality would be the longevity and eventual conclusion of Steve Moore's professional playing career. When the incident took place, Steve Moore was in his 3rd season as a pro hockey player and was playing in just his 69th NHL game as he tried to crack Colorado's roster full time. That year was the best year Moore had in the NHL as he set career highs in games played, goals, assists, points and penalty minutes. Moore was having a pretty good season and showing continued improvement each year, so if he wasn't sucker punched and had his career cut short, it is likely that Moore makes the Avalanche's roster full-time in the following seasons and has a pretty successful career in the best league in the world. Steve Moore was previously a 2nd-round draft pick, had won all sorts of silverware during his college career with Harvard, and was the Hershey Bears Rookie of the Year in 2002. So if Moore had achieved so much success on his way to the NHL, it's not unfair to assume that he might well have continued that success once he got there, and if his career wasn't ended by the events that took place that night, Moore could have made a real impact in the best league in the world. However, on the flip side for Todd Bertuzzi, this incident not taking place has less of an impact on his career than you might think. Whilst he would go on to miss the final 13 games of the regular season and the 7 playoff games Vancouver played in that year as a result of the suspension, Bertuzzi went on to play 529 regular season games and 63 playoff games over 9 seasons after he punched Steve Moore. So this event not taking place didn't really do much to harm Bertuzzi's overall career. Sure, some might argue that Bertuzzi missing the rest of the season actually hurt the Canucks more than has been suggested, as Bertuzzi was a key player and top point producer for the Canucks given his almost point per game pace through 69 games that season. With Bertuzzi being around for Vancouver's playoff run that postseason, he could have helped Vancouver be a more competitive team in the playoffs, and who knows, maybe he even helps Vancouver win their first Stanley Cup championship in franchise history that season. Something the franchise still has yet to accomplish. However, given the fact that he played almost 600 games in the NHL after this event, and the victim of the punch didn't play ever again, missing 20 games is a pretty small price to pay to remain in the league for almost a decade afterwards. Also, if this event didn't happen, the way fans around the league would have thought of Bertuzzi in the years that followed would likely have changed dramatically. It's pretty safe to say that Bertuzzi's reputation took a nosedive after this event, and whilst he would have 9 more years in the league to try and either change people's opinions of him as a person and a player, or make them forget about all the stuff that happened that night, there's no doubt that people still remember this event and think less of Todd Bertuzzi because of it. And I don't think you can blame them, to be honest. What he did that night wasn't exactly A, part of the rulebook, or B, an honourable or sportsmanlike thing to do. You could argue that what Moore had done to Naslund the game prior wasn't part of the rulebook either, and you're probably right. But if you fight fire with fire, you always get burnt. But the biggest change this event not taking place would have on Bertuzzi's career is the lasting legacy he has left in the league. Whilst he went on to be a productive player in the seasons that followed, and became somewhat of a fan favourite in Detroit in the years he played there, from that infamous moment onwards, he became known as the guy who sucker punched Steve Moore. He became known as the guy who ended Moore's career. Now, no fine or suspension or any success will ever change that or take that away from the league's history books. What he did that night in March of 2004 will hang over his head forever. Was Bertuzzi trying to get Moore to fight him? Yeah, probably. He'd been trying to the entire shift by the looks of it. Did Bertuzzi show remorse after the fact? Of course he did. He made it very clear that he wasn't that type of player and it was just a moment of weakness for him. Looking back, does he wish he hadn't have done it? For sure. But he chose to make that choice in the moment on that night, and he has to and will continue to live with the consequences of that action for the rest of his life. That might be the worst punishment of all. So, in conclusion, if Todd Bertuzzi didn't sucker punch Steve Moore on March 8th, 2004, the careers of these two players would have changed completely. Bertuzzi, whilst enjoying success after the event, wouldn't have become known as the guy who ended a player's career, whilst Moore would have had the chance to continue to prove himself at the NHL level and perhaps become a full-time player in the league for many years to come. It really is a shame that things ended up this way, because these two players certainly had a lot going for them at the time. Bertuzzi was in the prime years of his career and playing the best hockey he had ever played, whilst Moore was one of the top up-and-coming prospects in the league and was starting to live up to the potential Colorado saw in him when they drafted him in the second round. But regardless of what should or shouldn't have happened during the game between these two players, one thing's for sure. That one infamous night has gone down in the league's history as a game to remember, but for all the wrong reasons. And there you go. What do you think would have changed if Bertuzzi didn't punch Moore? Also, is there another alternate hockey history you would like me to explore? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye. A big thank you to Chris Gadsby and Max Artis for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of any future videos, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.